Family and fellow soldiers, I'm the Professor, and this is the Moment of Truth. By now, a lot of you have heard about the idiotic Oklahoma State School Superintendent Ryan Walters. You couldn't have missed him because of the fact that he did everything he could short of setting himself on fire to get attention. Ryan Walters has been making a total fool of himself ever since that moron stumbled and bumbled his way into public office, and just like those clowns in Florida's school system who wanted to use it as a platform for their asinine performative extremism, Ryan Walters has also now been sent packing. The 1619 Project broke the brains, such as they were, of the white right, because it boldly told the truth about how America's wealth was built on chattel slavery, on the backs of black people. And when they heard that they were going to be teaching this in schools, it's like, whoa, with this whole reparations thing going on, it's like, we gotta stop this now. That's the reason why they've been on this psychopathic jihad to attack the 1619 Project every chance they get. And the success of the 1619 Project and how widespread it became in the public mind led directly to Chris Rufo and his bigoted friends at the Manhattan Institute starting that whole critical race theory hysteria. These people thought that the schools were going to become a proving ground for their anti-black doctrine. Instead, it's been a proving ground for how to end one's own career. Ryan Walters himself had all kinds of idiotic ideas he had pushed, from demanding that the Ten Commandments be shown in every classroom, to having PragerU propaganda be shown to school children, and he infamously claimed that he would force every high school in the state to have a Turning Points USA chapter. However, by far the most reprehensible thing this guy did was when he said that the Tulsa Race Massacre wasn't about race at all. Why, to say that it was about race is to say that white people are racist, and you can't say that. He's been involved in one controversy after the next, one scandal after the next. Every time he opens his mouth, something stupid falls out. But this latest scandal has proven to be the proverbial last straw, and it wasn't even about him saying something stupid about race again. In fact, it wasn't even public. But that's how the last straw works. What happened is Walters and his colleagues had a closed-door meeting one day in July, and they claimed that during the meeting, pictures of naked women were showing on the TV screen. Apparently, somebody was basically intimating that Walters had pictures of naked women on his mobile device, and that's why it was being projected on the screen. Now, this was behind closed doors. Nobody actually saw this. There's no public images of it. But at least two people who were in the room claimed that it happened. Walters, of course, denied everything, but his own Republican colleagues hung him out to dry. State House Speaker Kyle Hilbert, a Republican, called the allegations serious and said that an expeditious third-party review was warranted. Quote, "I urge the state superintendent to unlock and turn over all relevant devices and fully cooperate with an investigation. If no wrongdoing occurred, a prompt and transparent review should quickly clear his name." But Walters wasn't about to go along with that, though he still protested his innocence, saying there is absolutely no truth to any implication of wrongdoing. In fact, Walters was so innocent that he opted to jump instead of waiting to get pushed and resigned soon after. And how much did his own Republican colleagues appreciate all the stunts he pulled? Oklahoma's own Attorney General, Gentner Drummond, a Republican, slammed Walters in a statement after the announcement of his resignation, saying on X that Walters' appointment as superintendent led to, quote, "a stream of never-ending scandal and political drama," and calling him an embarrassment to our state. This is what his own Republican colleagues were saying about him. Now, you would think that with MAGA mania sweeping the white right, they would have loved all of his little stunts, but instead they were looking and going, this is exactly the kind of stuff that gets us voted out of office. It's precisely the kind of idiocy that makes people look at the Republicans and say, these guys aren't crazy, they're stupid. So, what's the most uneducated educator in America going to do now? What do you think? He's going to go and do the right-wing grift full-time, just like Charlie Kirk and Barry Weiss and every other right-wing nut grifter who has any sort of name recognition. His entire time in public office was nothing more than one long advertisement for a wealthy conservative sugar daddy to put him on the payroll, and it looks like he found one. The so-called Teacher Freedom Alliance. Except they don't represent teachers at all. They represent rich white right-wingers who use groups like this to attack teachers' unions and who also think that they can make a ton of money if they could just get every public school in America to become privatized. Of course, these people see themselves as the ones who would be running those privatized schools. When Walters announced that he was going to be heading up this Teacher Freedom Alliance, he said, "We're going to destroy the teachers' unions." Well, if he does as good a job as that as he did being the superintendent of schools in Oklahoma, the teachers' unions can go ahead and already make out their victory speech now. So for those of you who have heard of this Ryan Walters clown and wondered whatever became of him, you see how quickly he crashed and burned. But his predictable flameout is not the reason that I decided to talk about him this morning. The reason that I made him the subject of this morning's briefing is that Democrats had absolutely nothing to do with his resignation. In fact, not one Democrat was running on a platform of undoing his stupid policies. None of them was trying to make him the face of right-wing extremism that needed to be stopped. Nobody was trying to make him politically toxic. None of them were trying to make his talking points into political radioactive waste. In fact, they did nothing about him and said nothing. This guy didn't get taken down by the Democrats, and there were no Democrats who were positioning themselves to do so. The fact that the trash took itself out is not a feather in the Democrats' cap. None of them are running on a platform to roll back this GOP nonsense and to reinforce a curriculum like the 1619 Project and teach actual history. The white right is pushing racist lies, specifically against black Americans, but not one Democrat is running on a platform to make the 1619 Project required education in schools, nor is even one of them talking about how they're going to get rid of all of that PragerU propaganda. They're not standing up for teaching about the Tulsa Race Massacre or anything else related to black history. Ryan Walters should have already been made into the face of performative extremism by the white right and make him into exactly the kind of avatar that Republicans would have to run away from, but Democrats have not done that and they're not about to. The reason that things like critical race theory get pejoratized is because the Democrats want it to happen. They create a self-fulfilling prophecy. They intentionally refuse to defend a policy that's under attack. They refuse to debunk lies if the Republicans tell about it. So of course the lies about those policies will be what people believe, because they're not hearing anything else. Democrats and the white left deliberately refuse to promote a counter-narrative to the white right's smears and lies. And to make matters worse, you have Democrats who not only refuse to defend these common-sense issues, but also many Democrats actively join Republicans in attacking them. That's why I constantly remind you of the lies that Negro Jim Clyburn told in 2020 when he blamed the loss of Jamie Harrison on people saying defund the police. Never mind the Democrats had a clean sweep in 2020, taking the presidency, the House, and the Senate. This while protests and uprisings were happening coast to coast. No, Democrats were already beginning the drumbeat of those lies that the very slogan that brought young people out in the streets had to be stopped. And in 2024, we saw what happened when clowns like Clyburn got their way. The Democrats got stomped easily in an election that they never should have lost. And even so, you still had liars like Congressman Jim Himes lying and saying that Democrats were still carrying the weight of defund the police. That's why we lost. It was defund the police. 4 years after the last time anybody had even spoken that slogan. These are all lies meant to distract people from what the Democratic leadership really fears, which is changes to the actual status quo. That's why we've seen people like Rahm Emanuel and Ezra Klein, all of these people from the white left and the Democratic Party or both, pushing the same line. You have to abandon any position or policy that would force change. When Rahm Emanuel talked about how Democrats needed to stop listening to those pesky activists and instead start courting what he called Biden Republicans, this is what I mean. Biden did everything that Rahm Emanuel would have wanted him to do. He turned his back on the very people who put him in the White House, and on top of that, gave money to the thugs in blue. And whatever happened to those Biden Republicans that Rahm Emanuel was talking about reaching out to? What happened was those Biden Republicans voted for the Republican Party. And then you got people like Ezra Klein saying that the Democrats need to reach out to right-of-center moderates, as he puts it. Never mind the fact that MAGA has pulled the white right so far to the right, there's nothing moderate about any of them anymore. So why are Democrats pushing for reaching out to people who hate their party and who hate their base? It's because that's who the Democrats want as their new base. That's who they're trying to court so they can rebuild their party along those lines. They want to be able to say, we had to turn to the right. Why, those black people talking about teaching real history and passing hate crime laws, they're just so fringe, they're so crazy. We can't win elections like that. Never mind the fact that the last time the Democrats actually won an election cycle was precisely because those very people were pushing those very policies and positions. These people are all over the place. The only consistent thing about the rhetoric from people like Jim Clyburn, Jim Himes, Rahm Emanuel, and Ezra Klein is that they all attack the very people who they claim they want to vote for the Democrats. Now, Republicans never do that. They lose an election cycle, they don't blame their base. Instead, they blame themselves and say, well, we weren't hardcore right-wing enough. That's what the Republicans do. No matter how rabid and foaming at the mouth their base may be, they never attack them. They never say, oh, there's something wrong with our voters. We got to find a way to straighten these people out. These people are so crazy. We can't win elections like this. No matter how many times the Republicans lose a particular election cycle, they never decide that that's an opportunity to attack their own voters. So you have the GOP attacking policies from the Democratic base, and you have Democrats attacking the base voters themselves. Now, I said all that to say this. When Democrats tell you that now that Ryan Walters is gone, you got to vote for a Democrat to take his place, so we can go ahead and get some good people in there, your question should be, why? What have Democrats said they're going to do? What Democrat has made a point of actually attacking the kind of anti-black crap that Ryan Walters was doing? What Democrat has made it their platform to attack those policies and make them absolutely radioactive to the public? What Democrat or Democrats are on an absolute jihad to make sure that Turning Points USA, PragerU, and all the rest of these AstroTurf white right organizations get turned to mud in the public mind, to make sure the public understands exactly what kind of crap these people are? What Democrats are running any sort of campaign or running any sort of program to do that? They never ever try to go ahead and tell people exactly what these white right organizations are. They never try to attack these guys. They never make it a point to educate the public that these guys are toxic as hell. They don't do that to them. That's how you know they're controlled opposition. As we get closer to the 2026 midterms and the election cycle begins to kick into high gear, one of the things that the Democrats and the white left are going to say is that all of this racist indoctrination by the white right is so terrible, and you better remember that on election day. But what I remember is that Democrats have not said they're going to do anything about it. They'll tell you to vote for them because, well, they're not Ryan Walters or they're not Donald Trump. And we have seen time and again that as soon as Democrats get back into office, they do not do anything about any of those policies. They just let them stand. This is the political equivalent of the hammer and the anvil. And what is the anvil's purpose? What is the anvil's sole function? To not move. That's its job, to be unmoving. This is what the Democrats have done. So, as for Ryan Walters finding himself with all kinds of free time on his hands, I'd say that it's even money that in a couple of years he's going to throw his jughead crown in the ring and try to run for governor or for the Senate or something. I can't see him staying with some sort of right-wing grift machine that long, but who knows? Fools like him just never learn. Good day, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors: Michael Ray, Sky Eye Mobile, Kenneth Johnson, Chevalier Foster, and Deborah Cooper. Salute to them and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.